From the outside, you look complete. Your voice is steady, your smile convincing, your presence calm enough to make others believe you understand life. But deep inside, there is another presence watching. It studies the way you speak, the lies you tell to keep the peace, the little performances you repeat every day just to belong. That presence knows the truth. It remembers the rage you swallowed, the guilt you dressed as kindness, the fear you disguised as confidence. You call it your better self, but it is not. It is the shadow wearing your face, the one that hides behind the light and waits for the moment when you are too tired to pretend. That is when it steps forward. That is when the mask breaks. And for the first time, you see the stranger you have been becoming all along. Imagine a person standing beneath a blinding light. Everyone around admires the glow, the warmth, the way it softens their features. Yet beneath that brilliance, hidden just beyond sight, lies a shadow that moves when they move, breathes when they breathe, and grows stronger the longer they pretend not to see it. This is where the hidden self begins. It is not born in darkness, but in the light that refuses to admit its limits. Every smile, every gesture of confidence, every attempt to appear whole feeds something silent within that waits for recognition. From childhood, people learn that approval is survival. A child does not lie because they love deceit, but because truth often leads to rejection. So they adjust their tone, hide their feelings, mirror what others expect. They learn that to be loved, they must not be entirely themselves. With time, that adaptation becomes identity. The light others see is not authenticity, but the mask of acceptability. It is polished, practiced, and praised. Beneath it, the disowned parts of the psyche begin to whisper. Those whispers become the inner unrest most people call anxiety, guilt, or confusion. The hidden self is not evil. It is the collection of impulses, desires, and truths that never found permission to exist. When someone suppresses anger, they also suppress power. When they silence sadness, they also bury empathy. When they deny envy, they also suffocate ambition. The shadow grows not from wickedness, but from neglect. And eventually, it demands to be seen. The mind begins to turn against itself, not because it hates, but because it is trying to integrate what has been split apart. The modern person believes that light is virtue and darkness is corruption. But the truth is subtler. Every act of goodness has a hidden cost when it denies the full range of human emotion. The person who dedicates themselves to being kind may hide rage behind politeness. The one who seeks purity may secretly crave chaos. The healer may carry wounds deeper than those they treat. To live in light without shadow is to live as half a being, divided by illusion. The hidden self emerges through contradiction. Consider how often people claim to seek love yet destroy intimacy through control, how they preach morality yet betray their own standards when no one watches, how they chase success but feel hollow when it arrives. The light they project blinds them from seeing the source of their suffering. What they cannot face becomes the architect of their choices. The more they resist their hidden nature, the more that nature rules them from beneath awareness. This is the cruel paradox of the mind. What we reject does not vanish, it transforms. The ignored emotions take shape in dreams, projections, and patterns. We meet our buried fears in the faces of others. The person we despise often mirrors what we most avoid within ourselves. The world becomes a reflection of the internal battlefield. Every argument, every resentment, every judgment is a disguised confession. At the core of the hidden self lies the hunger for wholeness. People think they want happiness, but what they truly crave is coherence. To live without the war between who they are and who they pretend to be. Yet coherence demands honesty, and honesty demands confrontation. The light must turn inward and illuminate what has been kept in the dark. That act is painful because it dissolves the comforting image built over years. The ego fights it, calling it unnecessary or dangerous. Yet the cost of avoidance is greater. A person cannot heal while they hide from themselves. The hidden self does not reveal itself through peace, but through crisis. When life collapses, when relationships fail, when careers crumble, when belief systems lose meaning, that is when the shadow steps forward. It does not come to destroy, it comes to integrate. The pain of loss and confusion is the psyche's attempt to restore balance. The collapse of false stability is an invitation to meet the truth. But most people run. They drown the signal with distractions, relationships, substances, or spirituality that avoids reality. They would rather polish the light than enter the darkness it casts. Yet there is freedom in turning toward the shadow. It is not pleasant. It strips away the familiar comforts of identity. It asks the question few dare to answer: who are you when the applause stops, when no one is watching, when even you cannot pretend anymore? The answer is not immediate. It unfolds through humility, reflection, and acceptance of imperfection. The light that emerges after that process is not fragile or artificial. It is the kind of radiance born from understanding both beauty and corruption, compassion and cruelty, creation and destruction. Every person carries within them the capacity for both virtue and vice. Denying either leads to distortion. The one who acknowledges both can live authentically. To embrace the hidden self is to reclaim the parts of the mind that have long been exiled. It means understanding that darkness is not the enemy, but the soil in which awareness grows. When someone confronts their shadow, they stop projecting it onto others. They become capable of empathy because they have faced their own ugliness and survived. The face behind the light is the truest face of all. It does not seek perfection, it seeks balance. It does not promise comfort, it offers truth. And truth, though unsettling, is the foundation of genuine transformation. The hidden self waits for recognition, not to punish, but to guide. Once it is seen, the conflict between light and shadow begins to dissolve. The person no longer fears their complexity. They stop performing and begin existing. The brightness that follows is quieter, but infinitely more real. When the hidden self awakens, the world changes color. What once seemed simple becomes layered. What once appeared good or bad becomes ambiguous. The mind begins to perceive the subtle motives behind every action, including its own. Compassion deepens, but so does discomfort, because awareness removes the protection of ignorance. To see clearly is to understand that no one, including oneself, is entirely innocent. The process of integrating the shadow is a dismantling of illusions. Each discovery feels like a small death, the death of an ideal, a belief, or a version of self once thought essential. It is tempting to resist, to rebuild the facade, but resistance only prolongs suffering. True healing demands surrender, not to weakness, but to truth. The individual must let go of the fantasy that light alone can sustain life. Without contrast, there is blindness. Many people equate morality with denial. They believe that being good means suppressing any impulse that does not align with virtue. But denial breeds corruption. When emotions are buried, they seek expression through indirect means. The person who denies their anger becomes passive, aggressive. The one who suppresses desire becomes envious. The mind finds ways to leak what the conscious self refuses to acknowledge. This leakage corrodes relationships, ambitions, and integrity. Facing the hidden self does not mean indulging every impulse. It means recognizing them without judgment. Awareness transforms energy, repression distorts it. By observing the darker emotions, the individual learns what they reveal, where boundaries are crossed, where needs are unmet, where fears have taken root. In this way, the darkness becomes a teacher. It offers information the light cannot provide. Society encourages the cultivation of image over authenticity. The hidden self becomes the silent casualty of that performance. People are rewarded for being agreeable, optimistic, productive, and unthreatening. Anything that disrupts the collective comfort is labeled as wrong. As a result, individuals grow disconnected from their own depth. They become strangers to their own emotions. The price of belonging is self-betrayal, but the hidden self never disappears. It waits in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in sudden moods that seem to come from nowhere. It reveals itself in art, in attraction, in the strange comfort found in tragedy. Every encounter with darkness, whether internal or external, is an opportunity to remember what was forgotten. The task is not to destroy the shadow, but to listen to it. Only through understanding can balance return. Imagine a person who finally stops running. They sit in silence and face the parts of themselves they once called monstrous. They see greed, fear, lust, jealousy, hatred, and beneath them, pain. The realization dawns that these emotions are not signs of moral failure, but expressions of unmet needs, of love twisted by neglect. Compassion replaces judgment. That moment of recognition is not glamorous, but it is sacred. The individual begins to integrate, not by becoming pure, but by becoming whole. The light that emerges from integration is not the fragile brightness of denial, but the steady glow of awareness. It is the calm of a person who no longer fears their own depths. They can walk into chaos without being consumed by it. They can love without losing themselves and confront evil without becoming it. This strength comes not from domination, but from understanding. In the hidden self lies the power of creation. The same instincts that lead to destruction can be transformed into art, insight, and compassion when brought into consciousness. Anger becomes boundary, envy becomes aspiration, fear becomes vigilance. The dark emotions are raw materials of transformation. What defines a person is not the presence of darkness, but their relationship to it. To know oneself fully is to live without masks. Yet such transparency requires courage, because the world often punishes authenticity. People who reveal depth unsettle those who live on surfaces. They expose truths others wish to ignore. As a result, those who integrate their hidden self may find themselves misunderstood or isolated. But isolation is not the same as loneliness. It is the space where individuality is reborn. The face behind the light is not an image to display, but a presence to embody. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has faced their contradictions and no longer seeks external validation. Their strength is subtle but unshakable because it comes from acceptance rather than performance. They do not need to prove goodness because they have embraced complexity. They do not need to chase perfection because they understand imperfection as truth. The journey toward the hidden self never truly ends. It unfolds in layers, each one revealing deeper nuance. Every confrontation with shadow refines awareness. Every surrender to truth dissolves illusion. Over time, life becomes less about control and more about understanding. The individual moves from seeking light to becoming light. Light that includes the shadow, not light that denies it. When a person finally meets the face behind the light, they realize there was never an enemy within, only the parts of themselves that long to be seen. The mind, once divided, begins to heal. The internal war quiets. From that silence emerges authenticity, the rarest form of freedom. And so, the hidden self stands revealed, not as darkness to be feared, but as the foundation of every truth worth knowing. What begins as disintegration ends as integration. The light and the shadow, once enemies, now coexist. Together, they form the face of a person who has stopped pretending, who no longer hides from themselves, and who, in knowing their darkness, has finally understood their light.